Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ozma. I am an overused moderator and a major contributor to the tier, and um, I wanted to kickstart a potential career here, well, career quote unquote, and make some discussion videos and stuff like that. And today I wanted to just start simple and talk about my top 10 Pokemon in the Sword and Shield overused metagame. Um, there's no major catch. I definitely didn't steal it from Finch. So anyway, I'd like to first start by talking about the honorable mentions. And the main six that I have chosen are Clefable, Hydreigon, Tapu Lele, Toxapex, Kyurem, and Kartana. And a lot of people might be confused as to why they might be seeing Clefable and Toxapex here and not in the top 10. And the simple answer is one, they're Pokemon that I think are better and more consistent, and two, the second of all, for Toxapex mainly, its niche isn't necessarily as relevant now because of some bans such as the Magearna and Toxapex, such as the Cinderace and Magearna ban, and those are pretty detrimental for Toxapex namely, but Clefable is a little bit better now, but I wouldn't say it's in my top 10. I'd say it's probably number 11 if anything. We see stuff like Tapu Lele here, which have become incredibly powerful wall breakers in the current metagame with stuff with Magearna gone. It's really hard to take on Tapu Lele stabs, especially with Modest and Choice Specs. And Kartana is, with the Swords Dance set especially, it's incredibly powerful, especially with the Grass Spam set. Grass Spam core with Rillaboom, it's really good. And there's Hydreigon, which had a bit of a falling out recently, but has come back with a really devastating offensive set. And Kyurem, with this kind of has the same thing going on, except it has more of a sub-roost set going on now. Pretty solid specs and scarf sets as well, but it's mainly sub-roost. So anyway, let's talk about number 10, Slowking. So Slowking is, a lot of people can generally consider Slowbro to be the better of the two, but in the current metagame climate, Slowking is a lot better. And the big reason for that is mainly because there are a lot of really potent special breakers, such as the aforementioned Tapu Lele, usually running like Psychic, Psyshock, Moon Blast, Focus Blast, runs Modest typically, has a Choice Specs, and it's really hard to switch into, but Slowking is one of the few Pokemon that is able to deal with that, and because of its pretty solid typing, able to take on Psyshock on Plissy, usually runs heavy duty boots, generator, also has access to Future Port, which is very, very powerful, has Teleport plus Regenerator, and so it's called Future Sight, Slack Off, and Teleport, and it's really good for taking on stuff like Tapu Lele, Nidoking, and the metagame generally favors Slowking's defensive attributes a little bit more than Slowbro, which definitely was hurt quite a bit from Cinderace's ban, and it's just a little bit better for Slowking right now because Slowbro doesn't really take on Tapu Lele as well, and Slowking is really, really good as a pivot, really good at taking advantage of Nidoking and Tapu Lele, which is really hard to do in the current metagame, especially because it can just teleport and get its regen back, and plus Future Sight, the teleport is extremely, extremely powerful, especially for wall breakers like Nidokings of your own, your own Tapu Lele if you really want. I don't really like Double Psychic very much, but yeah, Slowking's just really good right now, and it's usually really good to fit onto balance cores and bulky offense. It's just very, very good on offenses that need a little bit of a special backbone to deal with Tapu Lele and whatnot. So yeah, that's Slowking. Number 9 is Rillaboom, and a lot of people, namely in the viability rankings thread, there are people who said that Rillaboom is not worthy of being an A+, but this thing is one of the most powerful ball breakers in the entire tier. Really has a very, very wonderful revenge and boosting. Has a no, sorry. It has a very, very unique way to revenge kill Pokemon. Grassy Surge plus Grassy Glide is incredibly powerful coming off of a base 125 special, 125 attack stat, and Machine runs Adamant, max speed. Has two sets. It has a choice span set, which goes in. Has a really nuclear wood hammer knockoff U-turn. Most of the Pokemon that check it, like Manabuzz and Corviknight, do not want to catch this knockoff. Usually, well, it's mainly Manabuzz that doesn't like getting knocked off because losing its heavy-duty boots is really bad. U-turn, really good pivoting move. You can play around those same threats. It hits. Oh yeah, knockoff hits Zapdos too in Tornadus-T. Really hard to deal with this. Let's see, and then there's another set that's really, really powerful. Life Orb, Grassy Surge, Swords Dance, Grassy Glide. Usually depends. Knockoff, Superpower. You usually don't want Drain Punch because +2 Life Orb Superpower actually cleaves past Mandibuzz and Corviknight, which is really huge because those are Pokemon that should normally check it, but actually don't when with Superpower in the equation. And usually, you can see some people kind of messing with Wood Hammer here. I personally don't like it because longevity issues. Because Rillaboom in of itself can be a really great. Oh, whoops. Yeah, number Tapu Koko. We'll save that. Anyway, yeah. So, you can run knockoff for Zapdos, but Superpower works as well. It's just really, really good at wall breaking. It's really good for enabling things. Forms really potent cores with. Look at that. Tapu Koko is one of them actually. So I think it's a really, really powerful Pokemon and one that you should absolutely not sleep on. And yeah, so anyway, yeah, I accidentally clicked that too early. Tapu Koko is number 8, and it is probably one of my favorite offensive pivots in the metagame. Really great offensive and defensive typing, able to check Torn-T, Zapdos, and Zeraora to a degree. Usually runs T-Bolt, Dazzling Gleam, U-turn, Roost. Roost gives it longevity, which is a huge reason I like it over heavily prefer Koko over Zeraora. U-turn's another reason. Its dual stabs and Dazzling Gleam, Thunderbolt are very nice. Any T-Bolt switch-ins generally don't like catching Dazzling Gleam, Garchomp especially. Landorus-T is definitely a recipient. Does like about a third with Dazzling Gleam. It's not really reliable switch-in. U-turn can pivot around anything regardless of the type, which is really great. Amazing speed tier, really good at taking advantage of force switches. Really good at pairing with other offensive Pokemon because of its offensive typing. It's able to check stuff like Slowking, Corviknight, Mandibuzz. Incredibly powerful. Great speed tier too that eclipses Torn-T. It's able to switch in super well into Torn-T and Zapdos and whatnot. And it has a very powerful niche balanced offense teams that need to have a switch into these Pokemon and have app speed control for them. And Tapu Koko is really, really good. Like it's a Pokemon that I usually turn to when I need, an offensive pivot for my balanced offense teams or want a good answer to Torn-T. It's very good at that. And you definitely should not sleep on it. Oh, it runs heavy defense as well. And oh yeah, Electric Surge as well. That boosts Thunderbolts with a Life Orb boost, pretty much 1.3 times, and it's very strong. This T-Bolts really hurt. Subpar special attack kind of hurts it in other departments, but Thunderbolt very strong. Yeah, Tapu Koko is pretty good. I really like it a lot. So then number 7 is Ferrothorn. Probably one of the two only viable spikers in the tier. The other being Skarmory. Usually runs, only really has one set, Spikes, Knockoff, Bleach Seed, and Power Whip. Usually meant to hit stuff like Slowking and Slowbro, Finny. I've seen people mess with Gyro Ball and Body Press as well, which is Body Press is especially nice for Heatran. Usually, Pharaoh runs Fidef now because of Tapu Lele. It used to run Fizdef. It has just enough physical bulk to be able to check Landorus-T and Excadrill when it's healthy, so it definitely gets the job done. Leftovers, pretty good. Iron Barb's great for punishing U-turns. It's the big reason though why it's such a good spikes user though is because of knockoff, which lets it punish a lot of the tier's defoggers, usually by getting rid of their heavy boots. Is able to leech seed on a lot of offensive switch-ins or defensive switch-ins, keep itself alive. With that and leftovers, really good at punishing U-turn, like I said. Great for forcing progress against stuff like Landorus-T, which doesn't really want to stay in against the Ferro. And Ferro is also a decent check. Not great. It's a decent check to Tapu Lele. Easily switches into its stabs. Doesn't really like catching a Focus Blast, but it's still a very solid one. Very great spike stacker. Takes advantage of quite a bit in the tier right now. And it's definitely a Pokemon to turn to when it on like bulky offenses and balances. Has a great defensive typing as well, which pairs very well with stuff like Slowking. And it's just really powerful. It's great for forcing progress, and it's a really great wall because of its defensive typing and stats. So yeah, definitely don't sleep on it. It's very strong and very surprisingly easy to put on teams. Number 6 is Corviknight. Corviknight has 2 sets, but the more popular one at the moment is its Defog set, which runs usually Brave Bird, Iron Head, Body Press, Roost, Defog, U-Turn. Usually runs Fizdef, has a little, sometimes invests a little bit in Spidef. Can't remember at the top of my head. I think it's for Tapu Lele. Doesn't really run T-Bolt usually. I think it's like 88 or something, if memory serves correctly. Something like that. Usually, and so the thing about Corviknight is that its defensive typing is absolutely amazing right now. The big reason that it's in my eyes, I think it's the best debugger in the tier, and the main reason for that is because of its ability to usually outlive its checks. It's not checks, outlive a majority of the tier's Stealth Rock users. Its defensive typing checks things like Excadrill, Landorus-T. It's able to deal with Ferrothorn in a pinch. Great check to Garchomp too. Its defensive typing just so great against stuff like Landorus-T, Garchomp. It also does a great job checking Rillaboom, especially because of its neutrality to knockoff and its neutrality to actually no, the fighting neutrality is not that great, but it is very good at checking Grassy Glide Span. It's very great defensive typing. Doesn't need to run heavy D boots, which makes it a little bit of a knockoff absorber, which is really nice. So it can afford to run stuff like leftovers or Rocky Helmet to punish U-turn spam. I haven't seen heavy duty boots, but I've heard a couple of people talk about it, but I just don't like it because it spends some time in battle already. So with that in mind, the other set is a bulk up set, which is a really cool win con because it's able to take advantage of quite a bit. Substitute and pressure. Oh, I forgot about mentioning pressure. Pressure lets its defogs have outlast Stealth Rock, which is really nice. So it wins PP wars with pressure usually. Anyway, pressure plays a role here for PP song other moves. Brave Bird usually runs Brave Bird as its main stab because it's really good offensive typing and it hits everything with no immunities. Leftovers, and then that's usually running Spidef to cover stuff like Lele and whatnot, so it can, it's more of a setup. It's a setup sweeper, pretty much. Definitely needs to have some conditions go right. You need to get rid of really powerful wall breakers and give it a setup opportunity against stuff like Ferrothorn. Pretty good against Ferrothorn in my opinion. I like it against Pex as well. It's a pretty good win con. I don't think it's as good as its Defog variant because it's such a good glue. Because it's just like it's easy to put onto teams where you just need a form of removal. It's really good at pivoting around, maintaining momentum, so it's not really a passive Pokemon. This set is really potent win con. There's not too much else to say. It's a very effective Pokemon right now. The metagame, it's just everything is going right for it right now, and it's definitely showing in its usage and just how consistent it is to put onto teams and how consistent of a defogger it actually is. So definitely deserving of the spot. Number 5 is Heatran. Heatran is incredibly powerful. It has a few different sets. Has different variants. There's only one set that doesn't make use of this move, but it's Magma Storm. Magma Storm is a really good move. Save for the accuracy. The accuracy sucks, but Basically, Magma Storm allows it to trap things. So usually you see it with Toxic Taunt. Earth Power is the last move. You hit stuff like it finishes off stuff like Pex, and that's pretty good. Also has perfect accuracy in case you want an extra little option to stab and stuff. With leftovers, usually runs leftovers. Flash Fire gets a fire immunity, so it's pretty good at checking bulk. So it has two different sets with these four moves in mind. Max special attack, max speed. This is an offensive trans set, incredibly hard to switch into. Its Magma Storms only have like really a few switch-ins than here, like Hydreigon and Slowking, for example. So that's pretty strong. And however, this is not its best set. I think its best set uses these four moves, but instead has some Spit Def mixed into there, which lets it check stuff like Tapu Lele really well. This is the spread that I run. Outspeed stuff like Aegis Slash, neutral Aegis Slash with max speed. And it's really good special wall for that reason. Lack of longevity sucks, but leftovers is good in that front. Because Magma Storm is such a polarizing move, it doesn't necessarily need to invest much in a special attack for it to do its job, because Toxic and Taunt take off the difference for you. This also lets it trap Slowking and Slowbro a little bit more reliably as well. Also Hex, but offensive dealt with that already. Fine. But yeah, its other set is, which I think is underrated at the moment, is Rock's Plume. So this is just Lava Plume, Earth Power, Stealth Rock, and then your choice of Taunt, Toxic, Pot, anything like that. Leftovers works well here. I think the big thing about it is it's a Stealth Rock setter that beats Corviknight. Very good at setting its rocks. This runs the same spread as that. Checks stuff like Tapu Lele. Checks Kyurem in a pinch. But Kyurem usually runs Earth Power. So it's not usually the best. Sometimes you see Air Balloon for that very thing. Heatran's a very, very interesting Pokemon. It's just like, it has a lot of defensive utility. It provides quite a bit for teams. It's able to set rocks. Lava Plume super hard to switch into. Magma Storm super hard to switch into. It just does a lot. It's a very polarizing, powerful Pokemon. And a lot of techs recently have developed that have really kind of hurt it, I would say. Because, you got stuff like Hydreigon and Slowking that are rising that are making Heatran's job a little harder, but it's very powerful. Oh, one more thing, you can sometimes, this Magma Storm set also has some variations with the offensive set. Like I said, we also can see stuff like, Nature Power, which takes advantage of terrain, to trap water types and just kill them on the spot, which is very helpful. Some Solar Power, Solar Beam, Power Herb, which also works pretty well. Not too much else to say about that. So yeah, Heatran's just really strong. I think it's held back a bit by some metagame developments, but it's really good. Never sleep on it. Number 4 is Garchomp. Garchomp hurts a lot, unless you have a Corviknight, but even then, we've been seeing Fire Fang. So we're seeing stuff like Swords Dance, Earthquake, Scale Shot. Scale Shot SD is by far, by a landslide, its best set. It's extremely hard to deal with. Its SD boosted Earthquake with a Life Orb, really, really difficult to deal with, because most of Earthquake switch-ins do not like eating a Scale Shot or a Fire Fang or Stone Edge, which also hits stuff like Zapdos and Mandibuzz more reliably. Fire Fang is good for Corviknight, like I said, also hits Ferrothorn, but +2 Earthquake obliterated that anyway, so usually just runs this. Its speed tier is super nice, it clips its base hundreds. It's really fast. Oh, Scale Shot's good for Kyurem as well, Sub-Boost Kyurem as well. And it's just in general, it's really strong. It does so much. And oh yeah, and it also has a tank set, which has been kinda falling off recently because of the Cinderace ban. It was spammed quite a bit with Cinderace around. It was just like Self-Rock Quake, Toxic, and which was good because this pressured a lot of Deepoggers pretty reliably. Also smacked Landorus-T and whatnot. It usually runs Fire Blast, beats doesn't beat Corby. It doesn't really do that much to it, but it does beat Ferrothorn reliably. Sometimes you saw Endure to get rack up some Rocky Helmet with Rough Skin. Sometimes recently I preferred lefties. Used to run Rest. I've seen some people still run it. It usually ran enough for offensive Tran, which was about that much, 254, and then you just put the rest in defense. Impish, like that. It definitely worked. It's not as great now. I think it has a little bit of a harder time in this current metagame. Just again, because its niche is just kind of about like punishing U-turn spam and whatnot. It's really hard to really take advantage of that without Cinderace around. It's still okay, but I definitely think its strongest set right now is its SD set, because it's really hard to deal with. Like, it's really, really hard to actually switch into this thing. You've also seen some substitute sets, which also employ the same thing. You gotta deal with Corby a little bit more directly, but sub, SD, sometimes you see Sand Veil, to deal with, to make people cry against Sand. Not much else to say. It's a very straightforward Pokemon, but it's defensive typing is great too. There's not much else to say. It's a very straightforward but very powerful Pokemon that's been very strong for several generations. There's not much else to say. Scale Shot helped it quite a bit, so. Anyway, number 3 is Landorus-T. And now, I gotta defend myself a little bit. A lot of people say that Landorus-T is the best Pokemon in the tier, and that's a very defensible take. Because, you know, it does everything. It's a glue. It can do so many different things. I'm not gonna spare at the time because there's so much. You got, like, defensive Stealth Rock, which is definitely its best set. Defensive typing with Intimidate, and U-turn, and Knockoff. Makes it super reliable at its job. Its lack of recovery is its biggest weakness for sure. It can be run down very effectively. You see stuff like Quake, Knock, U-turn. That's its defensive set usually. Sometimes you see substitutions of like Toxic in here to deal with opposing Lando. Very, very reliable. Fits into a lot of teams because of its defensive typing. Electric immunity and ground immunity is very reliable. This usually runs enough speed for offensive Tran. See max HP, got enough there. It's not the best Rillaboom check, admittedly. That's why I like double flying if I run Landorus-T, because it's as a flying type. It has a fighting resist, which is fine, but it doesn't really do the best job as a flying type, I feel, just because a lot of pressure is put on it to perform well. And although it's very good at everything that it does, I think that there are other Pokemon that are a little bit more polarizing and consistent in that regard. Consistent's not the right word. This is a very consistent Pokemon, but I think that it faces too much pressure. You know? Anyway, back to the sets. You see Scarf sometimes. Very good speed tier. Knock off Quake. Stone Edge to hit the flying guys. Knockoff's very safe move to hit against a lot of different Pokemon. You cannot go wrong with it. And then there's an offensive Swords Dance set, which is also very strong. You see stuff like SD, sometimes 3 attacks. Actually, I don't like 3 attacks, and 3 attacks. Swords Dance, Substitute, Stone Edge, Quake gets the job done. Sometimes lefties, Salic, sometimes Salic Berry if you want to sub stuff. Sometimes you see Stealth Rock, so it's an offensive Stealth Rock setter. It's not bad, it's speed tier, Eclipse's Drill. Pretty solid speed tier. Outspeeds, Nidoking, Modest Lele. Definitely not bad. Not bad at all. It's top 3. It's incredibly versatile, and it's definitely one of the few good Stealth Rock setters in the tier, so it's very good at that. Pressures quite a bit of defog users with Toxic and Knockoff. It's able to U-turn around, stuff like Corviknight. Pairs and makes naturally it just fits onto so many cores super well because of its defensive typing and it's just its sheer utility and roll compression. It's incredibly strong, and it's something that you should never sleep on, but I think it faces a little bit too much pressure and doesn't have enough polarity to be in the top 3 for me. Top 2 rather. So anyway, that leads to the question. What are my top 2? So number 2 is Dragapult. Another hot take. Currently it's A rank in the viability rankings, but I suggested it to A+, and now I feel it should be S tier. I guess for lack of a better term, let's actually look at that. Because I feel like I described it pretty well. Here we go. You know, I'm just gonna make my life easier. Here it is. I think I put it down here. Yeah, okay, here it is. It's, okay, so I put it pretty good here. It's a premier form of speed control. Its speed tier is blistering, amazing typing offensively, super hard to switch into its Shadow Ball. Its U-turns are amazing. Its speed tier is unrivaled, except for by Zeraora, which has been used again lately, but make no mistake, its speed tier is unrivaled by anything else. It outspeeds Koko, it's able to just U-turn against anything. Dragos are super hard to switch into, unless you have a Fairy, but Fairies do not like Shadow Ball or being U-turned on, so it naturally pairs super well with stuff like Tapu Koko and Nidoking, because it's just able to exploit switches super well. It's an amazing enabler, but it's also very powerful in of itself. Choice Spec set, Infiltrator, pass subs, which is good for Curem, and just in general for sub hyper offense teams. It's a hyper offense destroyer. I absolutely love it. Speed tier and Infiltrator's body screens offense. Shadow Ball, U-turn Draco. Its best third, fourth move is typically Hex. Beefs up Shadow Ball. Depth 10 and with status spam in general, with like Toxic spikes running around, mainly Toxic, being a strong filler move on defensive Pokemon. Hex is just a very, very easy go-to. It pressures so many things. Though seeing like Fire Blast or Thunder is not uncommon, either for Fire Blast because it smokes Spadef Pharaoh, and Scizor, and also is a really good, just strong in general. Thunder hits Pex, but Shadow Ball blows that away anyway. And yeah, its feature's just great. Now granted, I think, and its other really good set is the classic Heavy Duty Boots pivot set. Very fun set. Makes use of Wisp, Hex, U-turn, Draco. Very good pivot with Heavy Duty Boots. Takes advantage of its speed tier. Will-O-Wisp lets it take advantage of its speed tier and its great utility to, cripple Pokemon. Offensive Pokemon, namely. Can also use T-Wave, which is also pretty good. I prefer Wisp, though. X is super hard to deal with, unless you have, like, a normal type, but normal types are a dime a dozen. Aren't a dime a dozen, they're, like, $1 million a dozen right now. Blissey's, like, the only viable one, and you just U-turn out on that. It's just, its speed tier with U-turn just makes it such a strong enabler, because it forces in so many different things, and things that could be very easily exploited, like the aforementioned Blissey, Clefable. It's just really good. And its DD set isn't really that great right now, because stuff like Landorus-T and whatnot, and Melmetal, but its special attacking set, with the specs, still hurts like a bitch. Really hard to swap into in general, because it's just really good at enabling things. It's really hard to deal with Cold, and I think it's by far one of the strongest, it's by far the most powerful offensive pivot in the tier. Great speed control, has great options to take advantage of its speed, and it's just really strong. So, anyway, now here's what I believe to be the best Pokemon in SSOU. I've mentioned it to some people already, but I think that's Torn-T. Torn-T is... it just does everything. It does everything so reliably. Obviously, the RNG is a very big issue. I understand that that's a pretty big dissuader for many. But I'm going to defend my stance. I think it is amazing at forcing progress. Its ability to use Regenerator to take advantage of, to constantly come in and force progress in a very unique way with knockoff. Its ability to force switches into stuff like Zapdos with its great, it's really hard to switch into its Hurricanes, especially after a plot boost. So typically, it's very good at forcing in specific Pokemon to get knocked off, which usually really want their heavy duty boots. So it's really good with hazard stacking. Sometimes I run Defog, either with coverage option or just knock, but I personally don't think it's necessary. Because it's just really good. It usually wants a coverage option. I like Focus Blast. Hits Tyranitar and Heatran very reliably. Losing on Aegis Slash sucks, but Aegis Slash isn't very common anyway. Knockoff blows that into smithereens anyway. Heavy Duty Boots with the Regenerator lets it come in so often. It has a great defensive typing to check stuff like Rillaboom and Kartana with relative consistency. It doesn't like eating a knockoff, but its speed tier is also very good. It's good speed control in of itself. Only really eclipsed by Dragapult, Zeraora, and Tapu Koko. which isn't a super giant thing, but it's still worth considering. Actually, it's a relatively big thing because there are things that kind of beat you, but Zapdos can be easily beaten once you knock it off, have rocks up. It can't switch into 2 Hurricanes, especially because it faces so much pressure, dealing with Torn and other threats. Yep, this is what it usually runs. It also runs a pivot set with Defog, and it's a very solid defogger because it's able to pressure stuff with knockoff very reliably. It has defog. It doesn't need to use a slap or roost, so because of regenerator, it just needs to U-turn out, use its great speed tier, not taking damage, and it heals back. And this runs Hurricane as its stab. Runs heavy boots, regen, and this tends to just be max HP, max stab. Anyway, it's just, I think I said it best in another one of my posts. I suggested it for S tier because I genuinely think it is S tier. It's one of the most commanding offensive threats. It's super hard to switch into, great coverage options, and it's a great typing that lets it check stuff like Rillaboom and Cart in the short term, and also checks Landorus-T that does running like knockoff or Stone Edge, but it's knockoff's not like big as a big whatever. Red regen somewhat circumvents that. That's why it was so good in previous gens, regardless of its Stealth Rock goodness. Obviously, it can be checked, and it does rely a bit on accuracy, which is obviously a big thing. But if its main weakness is its accuracy, isn't that like a sign that everything else is in its favor? Nasty Plot lets it be an amazing breaker. It's super hard to deal with this thing. I thought like Tapu Koko or Zapdos, but even then they could be beat because of its ability to just force progress. It's super polarizing and super great and powerful. It's a wall breaker that's super hard to deal with. It's able to do it wall break consistently thanks to Regenerator and its defensive typing, and has knockoff to actually enforce that progress. Slowking Galar Slowking is no check to this thing because knockoff gets rid of its assault vest. Tapu Koko and Zapdos get their boots knocked off, and it's super hard for them to swap into Hurricanes unless they're healthy. But Zapdos doesn't really catch that smoke very well. So anyway, yeah. So this U-turns is a great pivot. Pairs well with stuff like Zera and Tapu Koko. He pressures a lot of bulky grasses like Tangrowth. So it naturally pairs well into a lot of different offensive cores, and it's just really strong. It's by far, well, not by far, I would say it's close to Pult, but it's definitely one of the most consistent Pokemon in the tier, regardless of the RNG issue, just because of how polarizing and powerful its attacks are, and how its unique way of forcing progress is always just working. It's always doing work. And I find that to be really indicative of a top tier Pokemon. So anyway, that's my top 10. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will try to get out more content in the future, hopefully. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your night.